Howdy, my name is Laurel Wade, and I'm a graduate assistant working at Counseling and Psychological Services here at Texas A&M. Along with being a staff member here at CAPS, I am also a fourth-year doctoral student in the Counseling Psychology program here at A&M. So today, I just want to talk to you all grad students about the imposter phenomenon, something that many of us deal with. And I get to come into this conversation in a pretty special place, being both a graduate student who's coping with these things myself, and also knowing a good bit about mental health. So I really appreciate getting to share this information with you all today. So some of the things that we plan to get out of this workshop is one, just discussing what the imposter phenomenon is. And second of all, we want to discuss the impact of the imposter phenomenon on our mental health and productivity. And then also learn how it's perpetuated both within ourselves and within our academic systems. And to practice using CBT techniques to break the cycle of the imposter phenomenon. Also to acknowledge and internalize the strengths and abilities that have contributed to your accomplishments. And lastly, to learn strategies to help build some resilience against tendencies toward imposterism and also burnout that can be experienced as graduate students. So we won't include the video in our recorded workshop. However, I have included a link to this at the end of the presentation. But this really does just define the imposter phenomenon for us. So the imposter phenomenon was initially coined by doctors Pauline Rose Clance and Susanna Imes. And it is just meaning that people who are high achieving and have a hard time internalizing their success. And they might attribute that to external factors instead of to themselves and their own abilities. And so then they may struggle to accept their accomplishments. It might feel like a phony or a fake. And with that, that can really lead to a lot of questioning yourself in graduate school and really wondering whether or not you belong. So really kind of breaking it down, cognitive behavioral therapy is a really, really common approach in counseling. And so what the tenets of that are is that there is a connection between the things we think, the things we feel, and the behaviors we engage in every day. So just to get us started on kind of demystifying this imposter phenomenon and understanding how we can tackle it, I've broken this down into our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors that can be associated with this phenomenon. So some of the thoughts that people have related to imposterism, sometimes someone might think that something must be wrong with me because I don't feel okay, because I'm noticing myself maybe struggling more than my peers, or I feel like I'm not good enough, or feeling I'll always be one step behind, or others are going to see I'm a failure and maybe reject me, or think I got here because I was in the right place at the right time, not because of my abilities. And so you can think about these thoughts and how they might make you feel. And so for many people, it can lead to feelings of anxiety or fear. They might feel really sad. And a lot of times what can come with that is a feeling of shame, feeling embarrassed, feeling like they didn't deserve to be in graduate school. So working really hard to hide those feelings and not be found out. It can lead to feeling angry, to feeling exhausted, and even some resentment towards the work that you're doing in your program. And so then what does that look like? What does someone with the imposter phenomenon do on a day-to-day because of the things that they're thinking and they're feeling? Well, it can look like things that we're probably all pretty familiar with, like procrastination or overanalyzing our work, or staying up really late hours to accomplish some tasks. Maybe not wanting our friends to see how much we're struggling, so isolating ourselves, or avoiding mentorship because what if I meet with my advisor and they see that I'm struggling? What if they find out that I'm a phony? So avoiding that. And then avoiding opportunities to showcase your ability because you're just so wrapped up in the idea of failing that you don't want to showcase that. Now we know that struggling with these feelings, that they can have a significant impact on our mental health. Whether someone struggles with a specific mental health concern like depression or anxiety, we know that those thoughts of not feeling good enough, being afraid of being found out, being ashamed, that those can be common in those disorders. And it can also just lead to really having a hard time, even if it's not a diagnosable mental health condition. And we know one of the biggest destroyers of our well-being in these high demand programs and academic positions is burnout. And is that was founded by Dr. Maslach in the Maslach Burnout Inventory, that there are really 3 tenets of burnout which can show up and impact our well-being. So one of those being exhaustion. We probably all know about that in grad school. And that is when you're physically, emotionally tired. That can even have some physical symptoms like headaches, heavy eyes. It can even start to affect our cardiovascular health over time. So really important to keep an eye on that and know how we can support that, our health. And then cynicism is another part of this. So that is becoming cynical towards your work, basically, having a loss of hope in accomplishing something. So maybe thinking, why am I even bothering with this? There's no way I'm actually going to be helpful. This isn't even worth the effort. And also depersonalization is a part of that. So that is when we are so exhausted that we just have to sort of mentally check out, being disconnected from the meaning and purpose that brought you into your program. And that can be a really hard place because the things that you loved that used to be a motivator, you're having a hard time even caring about that anymore. So how do we perpetuate the imposter phenomenon? Where does that even come from? One of the ways we can look at that is actually through a model from Dr. Clance of how it is perpetuated sort of through our silence. And there are different patterns of how people can manifest the imposter phenomenon. So if you look here on the model, everyone in graduate school is going to get an assignment or a project or a piece of work. And if you're struggling with something like doubt or anxiety, when you get that assignment, maybe you're going to feel nervous about it, feel like you're not good enough to start it. And here we can get to very different patterns of how people respond to that anxiety. So on one side, we have people who tend more towards patterns of over preparation. So these are people who think, okay, because I'm worried about my ability, I'm going to have to work so hard. I'm going to have to pore over all of these details. Maybe they're going to miss out on some sleep. And they are really going to spend a lot of hours that maybe aren't even that productive, but they're so afraid of making mistakes and they're trying to compensate for that anxiety. And then after they've turned it in, guess what? They get a good grade and they're going to feel a little bit of relief about it for a little bit. However, once they get that positive feedback, that self-doubt is going to set back in. So they might ignore it or push it away. And they're going to think, well, it's only because I worked so hard. I'm not even that smart. That's the only reason I did well. And so then that's just going to make those feelings more intense. They're going to feel like a fake, have self-doubt, depression, or anxiety. But now there's another way this cycle can go as well. So we can go back to that being given the assignment, anxiety, self-doubt, worry. There are some people who respond to that through procrastination. And so these are the people who they respond to that anxiety through not wanting to start. So I actually relate a lot more to these folks who are feeling super anxious, don't know where to start. And so they might spend so much time just worrying and not getting started. And then all of a sudden the deadline is here. So they have to pull all of their resources together, do the all-nighter, and then they get that project turned in. And they're going to feel a little bit of relief. They're going to be proud of themselves for getting that done. And then they're going to get the good grade, and here comes the doubt. They're going to ignore that and say, well, it's just because I'm so lucky. I wish that I were smart. I wish that I had the ability to plan better and start when it's assigned. And it's just going to perpetuate that feeling of being a fake. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The procrastinators are looking at the over preparers and they're saying, I just really wish I had that drive. All those people over there are able to get it together and to study on time. I wish that I had that ability. I'm such a fake. However, your over-preparers are looking at the procrastinators and they're saying, I wish that I was smart enough to just pull it together at the end. It's only because I have to work so hard to be able to get all of this done. And because these two sides aren't explaining their process to each other, and we tend to be really quiet about our anxiety, both sides are going to get hung up in their patterns, and it just gets worse and worse over time. However, once we learn this, and something I hope that you all get out of this workshop, is that we're all struggling. We all wear it really different ways. And so both sides are equally intelligent and equally capable, but they are just caught up in their own experience and haven't learned from other people what that actually looks like. And so here I just have this goofy little image of a duck here to explain that it is the duck syndrome that perpetuates this. When we look at a duck swimming across the water and it looks so beautiful and graceful, it looks effortless. But if you look under the water, they are paddling to keep it going. Those little legs are moving so fast. And that is actually what our fellow graduate students are like, is that everyone is working really hard. And if we judge ourselves based off of that, then that can really impact our mental health. So where to get started on dealing with this within ourselves? Well, we have to kind of break it down. So notice your emotions. Notice that you're feeling stressed. Maybe the time comes that you need to work on that assignment. You might feel really, really stressed out about it. Notice that, and then take note of the situation. State those facts exactly as they are. So you might be thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm scared of this. Note, okay, I've been given this assignment. I have this long to do it. I am having the thought that I'm feeling anxious, but that's not necessarily true. And then center yourself, pause, take a breath. What do you actually need to do to get this done? And then we're going to write out the steps of what we need to do. So maybe that's, you're going to start pulling articles. You're going to ask your advisor for a deadline. You're just going to find out everything that's needed for this task. And then you need to figure out what those cognitive and emotional obstacles are that's getting in your way, so you can begin to tackle them. So you might realize that you need to meet with your advisor, but you're feeling really anxious about it for some reason. So pulling out those thoughts, is it that you're worried that they're going to think you're not smart if you ask a question? So that really gives us the groundwork that then we can kind of use our cognitive behavioral strategies to be able to pull this apart. So again, cognitive behavioral therapy is the connection between our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. And it's really a way of changing our thoughts so that we can engage in different behaviors. So to stop our perfectionism, to stop our procrastination, and get the tasks done that we need, and to feel better about it. So some of the thoughts that come together with the imposter phenomenon is maybe something like, everyone else is keeping it together, but I'm just a mess. Or I'm feeling so stuck, clearly I shouldn't be here. And then some that can be associated then with burnout, or like, this will never work out, why do I bother trying? And then maybe thinking nobody even cares about my work anyway. And then we need to really sort of think about how those really aren't the most helpful of thoughts, because it really is hard for us to know somewhere to go from there. So as we think about how to change those thoughts, I want to teach about the type of thinking styles that are going to be a lot more helpful for us if we're thinking about what are more helpful thoughts. So something that we need to have is something called the growth mindset. And that's not that you're in graduate school to prove that you deserve to be here, because you already got in. You are here to grow. So having a growth mindset is saying, I will come to challenges and I am here to get better. I will improve. This is not testing how much knowledge I came in with, but rather how much I can grow while I'm here, and give yourself that space to grow. And then also self-compassion. So embracing hardship as part of the human experience, and respond to yourself as you would a loved one. So now I would encourage you to kind of take a minute and pause the workshop and pause this video and think about what are some of the thoughts you've had when you have felt most like an imposter. What are some of your thoughts? And here's kind of a quick guide to thoughts. There are a lot more things that we call cognitive distortions that you can find, little bumps in the way that you're thinking and how your thoughts don't necessarily reflect reality. This is a quick way that I think that we can just start it for the purpose of this. Is some quick questions. Is this something I can do something about right in this moment, this thought? So having the thought, I'm not good enough. Well, what does that even mean right now? It just makes me feel bad. So that's not the most helpful. Or is it 100% true? When have my distressing thoughts not been true before? I'm sure there's times where you thought you were going to fail and you actually succeeded. Or is this all or nothing thinking? Am I thinking I'm either going to get the best result ever or I'm going to completely fail? Or is it something in between? Or is this a should thought? I should be working on this longer. Because what even is should? And then would I want someone I love to think this? Now, this is one, to me, this is one of the most helpful ones. So we usually are a lot kinder to our loved ones than we are to ourselves. So you're going to want your loved one to improve and to overcome their difficulties, but in a compassionate way is how you would express that. So what is then a more helpful way? Maybe instead of I'm not good enough, maybe it's I don't know everything I need to know right now, and that's okay. I can go find the information I need to know more. And then how would you want your loved one to respond? And now overcoming the imposter phenomenon doesn't mean that all of a sudden all of your problems are going to be solved. It doesn't mean you have to be the best graduate student ever, or it won't continue to be hard. But what this means is you are setting yourself up to be able to grow through those challenges of grad school. It's not some kind of cheesy thing where this is supposed to be the end all be all, but rather it is making you stronger. Now, in one of our in-person workshops, we would have everyone kind of go into a breakout room, but this is where I would encourage for you all to just kind of pause the video. And I want you to just kind of reflect on how you got here. Think about a time when you overcame something really difficult. What personal strengths did you use to do that? What unique contributions did you make to make this happen? And take a minute to think about it. For many of us, it can be painful to have this reflection, but I want you to just take a moment and think about it. And using that information, let that be a way for you to keep those resources when you're having one of those imposter moments, where you can actually remember those times when you have achieved and remember those specific strengths you have, because that is one of our best shields against imposterism. And I want to take a minute too to acknowledge that there are a lot of environmental and cultural factors that can contribute to our imposter syndrome. The research does actually show that people with minoritized identities are more likely to experience the imposter phenomenon. And one of the reasons we think that is because there's not as much representation of your identity in the space that you're in. And so it's harder to see yourself as good enough when you're not seeing that mentorship around you. So just kind of reflect on what is it in our environment that can make us feel like imposters, and know that it's not all about you and your deficits, that there are a lot of imperfections in any environment where we're called to achieve. And notice those things and think, if you notice a way that maybe the environment is not facilitating your well-being as much as it could, or you're not having maybe the support that you feel like you need, then maybe even thinking about that is something for you to keep in mind when you are challenging yourself, is maybe that is something else from the environment that you know that is not your fault that you're struggling. There are a lot of reasons for that, and remember your strengths and how you can use them. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we then overcome the burnout that could come from the imposter phenomenon. So exhaustion, again, is one of those tenets of that. And the way we want to overcome that exhaustion is taking time for our wellness. And so this is a wellness wheel. It turns. It's like I want you to think of it as the wheel of a car, that it's turning, it's always in motion, and there are all these different components to it, our emotional well-being, our intellectual, our physical, social. And if you were to get a nail in one part of this tire, it's not gonna keep rolling. And so this is really, really important when we're talking about the imposter phenomenon, because people who don't feel good enough are going to try and spend all of their time on this intellectual part. And while that's so important, if you are physically exhausted, you're really not going to have your creative energy. Your brain is going to be too tired to fuel the work that you came here to do. And that's actually going to fuel your imposterism. So we actually want to take time for all of those components of wellness. And also engage in some good time management. So I know sometimes when I've been in the midst of procrastination, maybe my writing project is up on my computer, but maybe those imposter thoughts are coming in. So maybe TikTok might come out. And that is because we're maybe avoiding and feeling anxious. So set a goal for even an hour of intense work, and set a goal and get rid of all of the distractors just for that set of time. Allow yourself to do that hour and then do something that really energizes you afterwards. And then also talking about depersonalization. So that is where we stop being connected to why we came and did this in the first place. And so I think that mindfulness can be a really good way for us to get back in touch with what we care about. And that is being able to notice things exactly as they are, to really appreciate everything that is in our environment. And I think that this picture really illustrates it better than really any words can, because it is the difference between having a mind full of chaos, maybe all of your imposter thoughts or all of the things you're worried about in the day, and let yourself just take in the environment. Notice the things that are around you. And with that, you're going to be able to get out of and observe those thoughts rather than being carried away in them. And there are some ways that we can practice that. We can go on walks and really just take in everything in the environment as much as we can, non-judgmentally. And we can engage in journaling. So just writing about our emotions exactly as they are and not trying to make them go away. And another thing that I think is really important is the practice of gratitude for overcoming cynicism and feeling like our work doesn't have any benefit. So gratitude, I know there might be some eye rolls from people who are having a hard time right now, and that makes a lot of sense. But gratitude is not saying that it's okay that your environment's hard, that you have to get over your hardship. Gratitude is saying, I am going to acknowledge my strengths, even in the midst of what's really hard right now. And I am going to focus on what's good so that I can take care of myself and embolden myself in this environment. And the research actually shows that people who practice gratitude every day, they build happiness over time. And those are actually people who are more resilient. It leads to better social connections, better creativity, better ideas. And so it's actually going to make you a better academic to engage in gratitude. And so there are some ways that we can do that. One of them being writing a letter to someone that you feel like you haven't properly thanked before, and writing about how they've influenced your life. Or you can even list 3 things that you're grateful for at the end of each day. And doing that over time really builds a practice. And that's going to help you to build that gratitude. So some additional resources you can use for the imposter phenomenon is we do have that video that I talked about that defines it for you here. And we also, Pauline Rose Clance on her website has posted the imposter phenomenon scale linked here, where you can actually go and take it and see kind of where you fall on that and see maybe how much you may be struggling with this. And we also have a lot of these types of workshops on our website. So you might could go peruse that and learn even more resources about this topic. Some that I think are particularly relevant are you a perfectionist? So maybe you're on the perfectionism side of things. We have a whole workshop on how to tackle just that problem. We have our anxiety toolbox and also understanding worthiness. So I think these are things that are all really relevant to the things that people struggle with for the imposter phenomenon. I also want to include the resources for our diversity and inclusion resources on our website. Because again, we talked about how this can have an impact on people's experience of the imposter phenomenon. Maybe you're struggling with that from not seeing yourself represented in your program or through experiences of oppression or marginalization. Then our Let's Talk program can be a great way for you to talk to someone in an informal way and to get some support in that area. And we also have some resources on our website, particularly relating to marginalized identities, where you can learn some topics for dealing with oppressive experiences and helping to support yourself through that. And lastly, here's the information from our website, our number. And if you are ever interested in scheduling a service with CAPS or looking at any of our resources, you can go to our website, caps.tamu.edu, or follow us on any of our social media. But thank you so much for attending this workshop, and gig 'em.